projects hosted by Aarialife Technologies. As an Oracle NetSuite partner, we are excited to host this webinar today for what we hope will be a very informative session for all of you this morning. Once again, thank you and welcome. Before we get started, please allow me to introduce ourselves. We at Aarialife Technologies have been part of the NetSuite ecosystem for quite a while now and are absolutely unabashed proponents of the platform. We are also globally present. We serve our North American customers from Canada, our UAE customers from our UAE customers are served from Dubai, and our APAC customers are served from India. We primarily focus on cloud technologies, artificial intelligence, and IoT. On the cloud front, we are associated with the products such as NetSuite and OpenAir, as well as Zoho. On the AI front, we have our own chatbot on NetSuite. It's listed on suiteapp.com. It's called Aria. We also have our own farm automation app, which will be launched shortly, and that makes use of the IoT platform. Right, so I want to introduce you to the main man for today. His name is Amit Prabhu. He's our NetSuite practice manager at Aarialife Technologies, a very experienced solution consultant. And that's the reason why his picture is bigger than mine, because I'll be fading out and he'll be taking over. Amit, with that said, I believe the show is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Chirag. Gentlemen, welcome to the webinar today. I'm Amit Prabhu. I'm accompanied by Chirag Joshi. And thank you, Chirag, for helping me align this webinar. Quickly, we just wanted to discuss today more onto what and how you can actually do your resource management onto projects effectively. And that's where we thought of having this webinar. While we thought of having this webinar, we have actually taken challenges of our day-to-day activities, and we will be presenting them today to you. Now, the agenda today, while this webinar happens, is to understand the key issues you run into without a system in place as you start your organization, you grow your organization. What are the key challenges you have? Resource management approaches which exist there in the world, which are predominantly more onto how the resources are managed onto the projects, challenges in managing your resources from a day-to-day perspective, and how a tool like OpenAir can help you manage your resources. Now, if you really look at the key issues you have without a system in place, we talk predominantly of three things. One is multiple bookings happening over the same multiple projects on the same timeline. Second is the visibility and resource availability. The third tends to be understanding the availability of skilled resources. While having said this, when we talk about double booking, in an organization, when you do not have a system in place, it is a common phenomenon to book the same resource onto multiple projects, as I said, only later to realize that the project execution cycle, that the resource has been booked twice onto multiple projects. This has a very high impact on the project timeline, as we have to realign the resources when the challenge gets identified. When we talk about visibility and resource availability, not having a system in place reduces the visibility of available resources to be deployed onto the project. If these resources, if there is no visibility onto the resource availability, there is very less chance that the resource might be underbooked or overbooked. Some even kept on bench while new resources of the same skill sets being hired. So when we talk about this, we say that there's a very high chance that you might actually not identify the resources within the organization and still go and hire new resources, which skill sets you actually have in the organization. No, this actually increases the total cost to the organization operations because you're simply hiring resources while the same resources are on bench. When we talk about understanding the availability of skilled resources, uh, maintaining a skill repository is very important, and it is very necessary as the organization grows. While many companies do this as one-time exercise, it is very important to keep the repository updated and match to the forecasted demand. So, you have a forecasted demand coming from all the projects which are aligned. So you need to align your skill repository to the demand of the skilled resources you have. When we talk about resource management approach, predominantly we have two approaches which our organization follows, a centralized one and a decentralized one. There are organizations now adopting hybrid resource management approaches, but from a traditional perspective, we follow either a centralized one or a decentralized one. When we talk about a decentralized resource management approach, uh, we actually look at it in a per se of how the resource has been managed. The project managers are actually the resource owners in this kind of approach. So in a decentralized approach, project managers are the resource managers as well. In a way, they have the responsibility to manage their team and ensure they are trained with the right skill sets. Since the project managers are also resource managers, there's a lot of resource demand requests coming across from multiple teams, which is overhead task which the project managers perform apart from the day-to-day project management activity. There is also a lot of personal bias which happens onto which, if you talk about an example, the project manager might might keep the best skilled resources with him onto his own projects, and only the ones which are not needed are allotted to different project managers. So whenever they are on bench, they might be allotted, but if they are not on bench, if they are partially utilized, he might want to keep it to himself because he knows that they are the best resources. When we talk about administrative overheads, the decentralized approach works well for a smaller professional services organization. As there are very less administrative overheads, you don't have to have a separate team managing your resources. And the job of the RMG team is not there, and it is distributed between the project managers itself. This approach also works well for teams with specialized skills, which does not have a need to share resources with other team members. So if you have a very specialized, skill sets, and all the teams revolve around specialized skill sets, and you don't have to share them, this might be a very good approach to follow, because then you don't have a department or an inter project resource request coming across. There are less conflicts as well. In a decentralized approach, you tend to have uneven work distribution. With the decentralized model, if the team shares the resources, it happens to be a challenge considering some team members being identified as a skilled resource and in a high demand, while others are not at all allocated to the projects. Some resources remain overutilized while some remain underutilized. Again, same, you might have a personal bias against, the resource, and you might want to utilize them. There might be demand from a lot other project managers who identify one particular resource as a highly skilled resource, and he might be in high demand and overutilized. Again, this might lead to his demoral going further, because a lot of work is being passed to him while others still remain on the bench. Again, no standardized processes. Considering we have a decentralized resource management approach, every manager follows their own process of identification of resources and assigning them onto projects. This might be a challenge specifically if managers have personal bias. Again, when we have a decentralized approach, you tend to have a personal bias towards resources because they report into you. Sometimes you have a liking towards them, sometimes you dislike them, and skill sets really are not mapped to what the performance of the resources. It is more of a personal bonding which acts in here. When we talk about centralized resource management, we actually have a separate team, R&D team, who manages the whole resources for the organization. Now, as I mentioned, there are a lot of companies who are following hybrid strategies. They have location-specific RMG teams. They have country-specific RMG teams. But the whole idea is to have a separate team altogether, managing your resources. Now, when we talk about a centralized resource management team, the organization has a dedicated team, as I mentioned, and all the resources are managed by the resource management group, and the entire responsibility of managing the resource pool is taken off from the project managers. This leads to focused allocation strategy, and the organization is able to control allocations in more detailed manner, indirectly achieving better utilization of resources across the organization. Now, when we talk about improved coordination of resources, coordinating the management of resources with a professional service organization can actually be really challenging process. By actually centralizing the whole resource management, organizations are able to view their resources at the enterprise level, allowing for a more objective and a strategic approach for the resource management. Again, we have a very proactive identification of need because we know what the demand from the organization is and where the resources are. A resource management group looks at the upcoming schedules, from different project managers in weeks and days in advance, actually, to identify needs based on forecasted demand. Operating under a systematic recruitment structure based on a business rule with resource management tools, and RNG can manage the strategic deployment of resources against real-time demand across the organization. This also leads to reduced labor cost, actually, because an RMG reduces labor cost in many ways, but the single largest cost saving actually comes from the shift away from siloed strategy, as in the decentralized approach, where staffing is coordinated within the project teams. Here it is coordinated across the organization by a single staffing team, and we have an enterprise level view. With a siloed approach, a unit director or a manager focuses on his or own department without a complete picture. Whereas in a centralized approach, when we have the RMG group, we have an entire organizational picture in place, which actually helps in managing the resources very effectively. And finally, we have the standardized processes. Because it is controlled by a single team, centrally, the RMG provides objectivity, actually, when recommending staff deployments. It reduces the emotional bias, decision making, and it actually promotes fairness throughout the organization. The RMG also collaborates with the project managers, the leaders, to ensure policies are being followed. And there is no personal bias across any resources, and the right skill sets are identified to be deployed on the right projects. Now, while we talk about this, we also talk about the challenges in resource management today. Okay, so what are those questions which needs to be asked while we talk about resource management? It's ideally, what is my resource availability? How are my resources available to me? Are my resources over or underworked or over or underutilized? Can I handle the upcoming demand? Do I need to train people? Do I need to hire new resources? What should I be doing for that? Do I have the right skills and the team in place? Basically, skill identification, need-based skill identification, team-based skill identification is something which is very important, which is difficult, without a proper system in place and a streamlined approach. Now, these questions can only be answered if we have the right, system in place. And OpenAir OpenAir happens to be one of the systems which actually helps you achieve this. Okay, I'll quickly shift to OpenAir to show a short demonstration of how resource management can happen inside OpenAir, what visibility we can have, and what processes can be defined. This is how OpenAir looks like, and I have a small dashboard for a staffing overview of how staffing needs can be met inside OpenAir. The first point to note is I understand my FTE forecast. So if there are resources which are needed in the future, for example, this is a analyst which has only less than 0.5 FTE left. So I know that if there is a demand coming for analyst, I really need to train someone or hire someone from outside. So there are a lot of graphical representations which can be achieved, but I would be more focused today on to how resource booking and resource management can happen. Now, if you look onto OpenAir, we have a resource management section. And as I said, you might have a decentralized approach or a centralized approach. A centralized approach would be more in terms of having a staffing plan in place and demanding for the resources and having those resources booked onto your project. From a decentralized perspective, it's more ad hoc. OpenAir provides you with a resource allocation chart wherein you understand what is the booking availability of your resources. Now, simply said, OpenAir provides three different views of understanding how the resource availability is, what is the staffing right now onto the projects. One is called as a worksheet view. This is very handy view if in case you want to see in a single place, how my resources are put across projects. So if you really see this, I have, resource names and then what projects they have been booked onto and what is the, percentage allocation of those resources. And, we have nice indications here of green, blue, red, indicating to me whether that resource is underutilized, whether he's rightly utilized or he's overutilized. So that's the indication which is given by the system. Now, this view actually helps you also allocate resources right from here. So if I want to add more allocation to the same resource, I can simply select which project I need to allocate. What is the booking type? Is it confirmed? Is it a tentative booking, or I just have an internal booking? And then I can just go and fill up the number of hours. I want to book this resource onto the project. Okay. As soon as I do that, I see here how his utilization looks like. If he's overutilized or if he's rightly utilized. And then I can simply save and submit this. Now, having said that, the worksheet view also allows me to look at the resource view as a time basis by hours or in terms of percentage. Okay, and it also allows me to move across dates, so I see how the resources have been booked over a period of time. Now, there are other views available in OpenAir. For example, you have the chart view. The chart view actually allows you to view the resources, the booking of the resources, but it does that by color coding. So if I have to see how my resources are booked by types, so if you see here, this resource is booked for 42 hours out of 40, he's overbooked. And it's nicely indicated by the arrow here, but it also shows me that there is a percentage wherein he's tentatively booked and there is a percentage where there is confirmed booking for this resource. So I have multiple views inside this particular chart view wherein I can go and check how the resource booking has happened. If I want, I can add more columns here to understand which project, what location this resource belongs to, all those details right at my fingertips here. It also allows me to customize this chart a bit. So I can define my own color codings. I can define, how many resources, how, whether it should be in hours or the representation should be in percentage. How is the duration representation? How many, weeks or months I want the representation to be. Okay. And this actually serves as a very good view, single snapshot for the resource management team or the project managers to understand if I have to book more resources, then when should I book him and how should I book him. Having said that, OpenAir also provides you with a planner view. Planner view is basically allows you to look at the overall plan by resource type or by client. So I can see which customer, which project, which resource, and how is the booking. Now, the best part about the planner view is it shows you as a timeline. So if I want to book Adam, for example, here, I can simply go and drag and drop and have his booking done in the system. So I can select which project, how much percent of time, and simply save and submit. It's very easy. Okay, so I have to select a booking type here. It's very easy and very intuitive. On the fly, as I look at the bookings of different projects, I can actually do that. But if you really see, once I booked it, it also shows me that the resource is overbooked. So I have a very clear view, and this also helps me in if else analysis. So although I have booked him here, he's not confirmed until I save him. So I can say, okay, if I book him 100%, then he's overutilized. Again, this gives me a quick view as well. It tells me all the details about this resource. Okay, I can see where he belongs to. I can see his calendar. I can see his utilizations. I can see his time of request or leave accruals, so that I have a very clear visibility of what this resource is supposed to do going forward, considering I need to deploy him on my project. Okay. If you have a centralized RMG team, this might be one of the views you might use, but rather you might also want to actually utilize a staffing plan. Okay, it's a very new feature. I would not call it very new, but it's a new feature by OpenAir. It's a very nice feature, I feel, wherein maybe a project manager can go and create a staffing plan. So he can say that, okay, I have a project which is there. So let's say an ERP. Let's say an ERP implementation project, and this is for Ultima Technologies. I can simply have an expected start date. So I can say it's starting from 6th, and it will go for around 3 months, just for an example. And the booking type I want is confirmed. Now, while I do this, this is a staffing plan. Sorry, I need to enter a start. Okay. Okay, it's putting it mandatory. This is a staffing plan. I can have multiple resource requests under the same staffing plan. Okay, so for example, I want to request for Java resources, and I'll say I need 2 of them, and the resource request is open. I'll say start date and end date to this. I can select if these include regular resources or if I want to include generic resources. How do I want to book the time in terms of percentage or in terms of hours? For example, I want to book 30%, and then the most important thing is the base criteria. It actually allows me to select the skill sets. So let's say I want Java resources, any skill sets or any level of expertise would work for me. A preference level. So I also prefer someone with MS SQL skills. I will save that. And if I want to exclude someone, I can define it here. Now these requests are submitted and it comes to the resource management team. A resource manager can, actually search for resources. So, I have done a quick search here and, I see that there are these resources which are available for me to be deployed with skill sets of Java and MS Server on the dates I have specified. Now, I can simply autofill this. The system will pull up the best resources to be assigned, or I can manually do that as well, manually select them. Now, while this has been done, I can pull up a chart to understand their bookings for any of the resources. It tells me which resource on which project, what type of booking, what is the start date and end date of bookings, and how many hours they have been booked. Okay. Now, while this happens, I also have a wonderful view called as a compare view. So I can simply add them to compare, and then actually have a look at them. So I can say go to the compare view, and it will actually tell me all the details about the resources, the rate, hourly rates. If I want, I can hide this. So I can define what needs to be shown here as well. What is the utilization looking like, which department they belong to, whom they report into, what has their role been, what products knowledge do they have, what are the technical skills. The entire details of that resource are available in a straightforward comparison to me. If I want, I can create a booking right from here, or I might want to download this data in the form of Word, PDF, or Excel, and maybe send it to the project manager just for him to have a glance at it. So he might want to select one of them. Okay. Coming back here, I will autofill for now. So I'll say that I want to book this two resources, and I will save this. Now, what happens is this resources actually get selected onto the resource request. Okay. Once I have finalized that, yes, I want to go ahead with this, I simply can click on book, and those resources would be booked for me onto my project. Okay. Now, this one resource which is booked, I can book the second resource as well. This is approved, this is submitted. There's an approval cycle actually which will run against this because I have defined the approval workflow. But if not, you can have an auto approval as well. Now, while the staffing plan completes, you see the progress of the staffing plan. You see it's 50% complete. That's because I have just booked and approved one resource, one is not approved. I can have multiple staffing resource requests here inside this staffing plan. Okay, this will actually allow me to have a very streamlined process, giving me a view of what skill sets are available for me to deploy onto project as and when the request comes. Going back to the dashboard, as we said, we can have details about uh, what resources are available, full-time employees availability, what skill sets are available, how is the forecast utilization looking like per month for resources, what is the target utilization across resources, and what is the forecasted utilizations across. Now, these are few of the dashboards which we have put, but you might want to create your own dashboards considering the data you have in the system, and make this available for your RMG team to actually view it, or maybe across the project managers if you are using a decentralized approach. Having said that, we would want to open this floor for any questions you have, so that they can be answered. Chirag, any questions from any participant?
I have so far not received anything. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there are no more questions, then maybe we'll wind up. But we'd like to keep the floor open for another 5 minutes, just in case anybody has any questions based on what we have shared today. We'd appreciate your questions, please. Thanks.
I believe there is one question coming up, which is what is the capabilities of report customization? Uh, just to answer your question, OpenAir has a report module wherein you can create your own reports. So you can actually go and create a new report, and based on what data you require onto your reports, just drag and drop those fields, have the right rows and columns in place, and you should be good with any report you want. Recently, OpenAir also has launched a feature for cross table reporting. So you might want to explore that as well. In case you need some more help, you might reach out to Chirag or me onto our email addresses. Okay, there's one more question which is come. Is there a provision for handling generic resources? Yes, of course, there is a provision for handling generic resources. NetSuite does allow you to assign generic resources onto projects, as well as have bookings done across generic resources. Any other questions? Okay, there is one which is, can we click and drag and modify the bookings in the planner view? Yes, you can. So, while we talked about the planner view, let me go back there again. So while we talked about the planner view, you can drag and drop, you can also resize it. So for example, you want to move this resource booking to some other time, you can directly drag and drop them. That's how it works. Or if you want to increase or decrease the time, you can do that as well. Having said that, we also have an option for bulk booking, wherein you can actually go and do a bulk booking action onto a particular resource. There is one more. Can we define custom approval workflows for resource booking? Yeah, there's one more which says, can we define custom approval workflow for the bookings? Yes, we can customize the approval flow for resource bookings, but we really would want to understand what exact level of workflow you need. Based on that, actually, we can discuss this further, because this is a larger topic to discuss, in fact.
Do we have any other questions? So in that case, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very good morning. We hope that you found this session informative. And with that, I wish you all a great day. And Amit, thank you for conducting this webinar.
Thank you, Chirag, for joining. Thanks, gentlemen.